Mascot horror is a subgenre within horror that revolves around child-friendly mascots that turn out to be evil and want to murder children. Within these games, you often explore abandoned or closed locations. Not only does this make the experience spookier, but also the game devs don't have to model that many humans. Oh, my cat just joined me. The term mascot horror is coined by John Wolfe in 2018. They had made a tweet at the time talking about games like FNAF and Bendy the Ink Machine. Since then, we got games like Rainbow Friends, Poppy's Playtime, and the main subject of the video, Garten of BanBan. Hello. A topic that is so hyped that MatPat found out it's the highest searched new horror IP on YouTube. But why is that? Well, in this video, I look into the history and possible future for the game's developers and see where everything went wrong. Though much like No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk 2077, a phoenix can always rise again. Hello, I'm Ryan, and we'll be gartening up in the BanBan. The Euphoric Brothers is a moniker created by German-Canadian developers Faris and Badhir Ahmed. The latter is listed as Geppo on their updated website, though they haven't updated their bios in quite a while. The duo, more specifically Faris, had been around since 2015, well, making games. They posted on websites like Construct, where Faris went by the name Fathy Basha. Some of the early games included 2D titles like Cloud Serpents and Human Apocalypse. At this time, the duo went under the name Movers Games, though quickly switched over to the Euphoric Brothers moniker a few years later. The Fathy Basha account is still being used on Reddit, giving official information for BanBan as well as asking questions or talking about game development in general. But there was one interesting post in the Reddits that I want to touch upon, the one where they pride themselves on making a game within a month. Not for any reason, just... yeah. That's interesting, I guess. Around this time in 2021, they'd also make a YouTube channel called Midnight Duck, in which they'd animate short horror stories within their game's engine. Though it never gained much traction, they had their eyes set on something larger. The same year in September, they had a booth at PAX West showing off their game Human Apocalypse, to which they did an interview with Game Raven Review about their project. Their early games were pretty successful, such as Teenage Simulator, hitting 10,000 downloads in less than 3 days. That game is about school shooting. Stopping it. Human Apocalypse even having very nicely written positive reviews over story and gameplay. Nice. However, all the games I've been describing were 2-dimensional, and it wouldn't be until 2022 did they release their first 3-dimensional game, Egghead Gumpty. This one received more attention due to streamers and let's players getting their hands on it, reacting until they shit their pants. There's not really anything special in this game. It's got like a egg hunting you. Ooh. But for YouTubers who need to release daily, sometimes you gotta play a little indie game once in a while between the big releases. Said big game would be Garten of BanBan, which was announced on Twitter November 29, 2022. And the game would release 2 months later for free. Needless to say, it reached #1 on itch.io January 9th, and quickly garnered the eyes of many streamers, and yeah, I can see why. You have colorful characters with some light lore, and very short gameplay. Also, it's free. Did I mention that? It is. Oh, I mean, you have to pay for the other games, but you know what they always say, the first taste is free. For horror games. For just horror games. Since the release of Garten of BanBan, a lot went down, causing the game devs to leave Twitter temporarily. So what caused them to take a leave of absence? What is the game even about? And will you subscribe to my channel? You can find out all these things by just continuing to watch this video and subscribing. Thanks. I played all 3 of the games into Discord VC as a way to add banter and real-time reactions for this video. For most of us, this was literally the first time we've seen the games in full, and yeah, that was fun to see. The games are immensely short, take an average of 30 minutes to an hour, though I did see the game archivist on YouTube finish all the games in 2 hours, so I'm guessing there's some shortcuts to take. Noting aside the very avid and very serious speedrunning community for Garten of BanBan, of course. No one can top them. So now I'll go into somewhat long detail about the games for those who haven't played any of them. I mean, I recorded all the footage, so I'm gonna use it. Okay. Playing the first game was a bit of a learning curve, as rather than pressing buttons like a normal person, you're subjected to using a drone that has to smash itself into walls to do anything. Aside from that, the first thing I noticed was how ugly the game was, with what seems to be mismatched assets. Even noting the batteries you collect for the drone has a texture misprint. You know, I would just get rid of the text entirely. Like, we can tell what batteries look like without text on them. Batteries. But let's worry about assets later. We need to talk about story now. You play as a mom looking for her kids in an abandoned garden. You see the Garten in German translates to garden in English. What fun lessons we are learning today. And the mom character is put through a lot of trials and tribulations looking for offspring, that by the end of the game I jokingly asked, because if the kid's like only 4, I can just make a new one. Like, this seems like a lot of hassle for a kid.
I can make a new one!
Moving along in the playground, you have to collect 6 eggs to place into the bird's mouth. While that seems very simple to do, there's one egg that requires a little more energy for some reason. Despite the fact you can reach the egg with your hands, you instead have to press a button under the slide, then another button with the drone to make the egg roll out for some reason.
Ball.
That was
What
Oh,
a
that's
fucking
and-
puzzle!
You know, I really don't like using the term puzzle when talking about the things the game makes you do, because you don't really feel stimulated when you do them. I noticed such when I got this egg. The next thing the game makes you do is break some strangely thick glass with your drone.
Ow,
Oh my God.
fuck, that glass is thick as fuck.
And at this point, I realized how large the delay was when pressing the button, and the eye figuring out where to go. I'm sure we could have cut a lot of these speedrunners' times down if not for the delayed reaction. Pray for them. The next obstacle is selecting the right color for each character, but not before crossing the world's safest chairlift. After beating this brain teaser, you meet the only enemy in the game, Ophelia Bird, and the AI they programmed is pretty interesting. It mimics that of a predator-prey relationship between you and the bird, meaning if you panic, it kills you automatically, but staring it down delays an attack.
Hey, what's up?
Hi there, buddy. Give me
I
kisses.
died.
After defeating the bird by pressing a button, which is often how most birds are defeated, you go to the main office of this incredibly small daycare. You end the game by pressing some buttons, and you go down to meet everyone's favorite character, Jumbo Josh. You know, I'm very glad this game was free, as playing it really felt like an alpha of a game, not even a beta like the thing before it, an alpha. While most people are going to play this just for the lore, the gameplay in of itself should at least engage the player instead of forcing the player to engage with it. The next game is thankfully a lot longer, but also has voice acting from Ferris, Badir, and some other people. This leads to a lot of waiting while BanBan, spoiler I guess, gives us lore. Lots and lots of lore. Interesting enough, this time around you can actually customize the color of your drone and give it little hats. Though most of the apparel are too small to see anyway, so it kinda just feels like extra fluff.
Oh, yeah. Look at that highly detailed fucking hat.
The first obstacle is us pressing buttons in order based on the shade of the wall to the office chairs, though I didn't give a shit and just did it with trial and error instead. I lamented that they should just had completely different color codes instead of slight gradients.
We're going to be here for 30 minutes.
That's fine.
Hell.
What proceeds is a running puzzle, and by that I mean you follow the directions and you're done. After BanBan knocks you out, you wake up in a new room. The next obstacle literally has X's on the walls to get you out the back rooms. You see, it's not really a puzzle, it's just things the games make you do. Next, you're on a fetch quest, getting a syringe to suck out some fake blood, known as Javanium, that you put into a bottle. And for some reason, injecting this blood unlocks a door, which personally, if I was working at a facility that made me do that, I would quit. But perhaps they have great dentals, so might as well stay.
Time for your
You're just
BanBan
a
rectal
robot.
exam.
We eventually meet Banbalina in one of the longest sections of the game, where you have to answer nonsensical questions while you wait for her to stop talking. We then meet Slow Celine, playing the game Red Light Green Light, to which we get to one of the worst obstacles, firing rockets into buttons. And while that does sound easy enough, however it has a slight delay, meaning sometimes I wait for it to stop, only for it to switch last minute, you know, on the one I was supposed to hit.
You gotta wait, alright? You gotta have some patience.
Why?
We later get to a jumping course, which was fun, and I liked it. Yeah. BanBan then traps us in her room and does his favorite thing, give exposition. Lastly, we had to run away from Banbalina, who then gets smashed by Jumbo Josh. After you pick up a key card she dropped from her BanBan Coochie, we go down another elevator, and then the game ends. While there are some improvements, or rather just variations of gameplay, the addition of voice actors and length really aren't anything to write home about. I mean, upon finishing the game, it still feels incomplete. Not that it was short, but rather than the aesthetics as well as the level design. The puzzles themselves felt more like padding just to get to the lore. Well, that is, when the puzzles actually mattered. It kind of felt like the developers wanted to tell a story first and add gameplay around it. Lastly, well, for now, we have the newest game release, Garten of BanBan 3, and the sequel really broke me. I was questioning what the developers are thinking with the creative decisions. You have the classic, what were they thinking? It's the reviewers. Garten 3 is the biggest game in the series so far, with 4 large sections and a lot more exposition, so be prepared for that. We start off with a fetch quest, collecting the world's tiniest objects, then we get to do some drone flying. Again, after that, we meet Senior Flynn, where we get more exposition, and get to see the classic BanBan mobile, the most out-of-place looking object in the whole game.
You ever been to Jamaica?
No.
It has
Actually,
that thing right there.
Yeah.
After the jellyfish stops talking, we get transported into a new body and do our most favorite thing in the world, pressing buttons. But back into our MILF bod, we gotta collect some buckets and play a hopping game. Okay, it's not really a game, but I felt it enjoyable. I guess I just like platforming games. After more exposition, we get to do surgery on a spider thing called Nab Nab. Also, Nab Nab backwards is BanBan, for those not in the know. After some exposition, a small obstacle, then more exposition, we get to ride the infamous BanBan mobile, where we get even more exposition.
I like that little. Wait, I like that little guy.
Hello, how's it going?
At this point, it felt like the duo just wanted to make a movie or something. Like, you know, whenever you read a comic that has way too many words and you think to yourself, this should have been a novel. But now we're back in the Joyfish bod, and we gotta shoot even more fucking buttons. This one was actually quite hard. Not in the sense of, ooh, how do you do this, but rather, does delay when you shoot? Look how fast the buttons are going.
It hates you.
Oh,
It
no.
hates you.
Oh no.
We awaken back in our MILF bod, finding ourselves at the dining table acting like dolls. This section was very nice, and something I can point to and say, yeah, That's a puzzle. In this section, you have to collect blocks and place them around while being wary of time. Jumbo Josh often returns to make sure everything is still in place how he left it. The only issue I had with this section was one puzzle where you had to try and press a button that's recessed for no reason. What follows is some light math and our first ever boss fight. You have to press a button to pick up a rocket in order to shoot the tongue of this two-headed turtle. While doing this, you have to dodge spitballs, which has like a 50-50 chance of hitting you if you're near it. It's got really bad hitboxes.
It clips through the objects to kill me.
When you hit the boss, you have to watch closely, because besides a slight explosion, there really isn't any indication you got a successful hit in. After defeating them, you get 2 party hats to place onto a roller. Having to move the device to another room, you have to keep pressing it, while it repeats the same voice lines over and over and over again.
3 stones with 1 bird.
They couldn't have added some extra lines.
No.
What follows is the worst part of the whole game franchise. Well, so far, I guess. Not for any difficult reason, but rather the fault of the programmers. You have to grab this chick and jump onto Apelia while pressing the interact key, which sounds simple enough. However, no matter how many times I tried, it was only until I spammed the button to actually get on the bird. And every time I failed, it pushed me all the way back to the boss section, leading to a lot of backtracking. Some people in the forums of the game actually asked about this.
I jumped on him like I was supposed to.
With the game wrapping up, we get some more exposition, leading us to a race of another bird that for some reason gets stuck sometimes in the course. This causes evil BanBan to grab and shake us.
They should polish the... It's stuck. It got stuck.
Are you serious?
The game ends with all notable characters fighting each other while we take one last elevator. And after the finishing game, I felt not only underwhelmed, but rather tired of the whole experience. If I was giving these games a try out and I was not told they were published, I would just think they're betas. You know, I can see where the concept is going, and I can't wait to see when it's finished. Wait, it's finished? Overall, it just feels like an undercooked game that needs more time in the oven, as there are a lot of aspects that I like. While the lore is a bit shallow with the evil corporation, dead kids, and evil mascots, I was at least intrigued by it. Just because the story retreads the same ground doesn't mean it can't branch off into something new and take us to unexpected places. However, in saying all this, the reaction to the games are visceral, leading me to believe the success of the games led to more stress on the developers than they ever could imagine. The amount of attention and hate this game has gotten is so unprecedented, I have to take a step back and really analyze the situation. As a recap, while the two brothers have made games for years, the foray into 3D gaming is just as early as their recognition to the mainstream. It's as if they mastered walking and just started learning how to run, but then their dad filmed them and now the whole world is shitting on them because they can't run a marathon at the age of 8. Speaking of those ages, Ferris and Buddha are just 21 and 20 respectively. While not kids, they're still young in the game. Pointing back to their known works mainly being 2-dimensional, it is understandable that 3-dimensional works would be lacking in both modeling and animation. This led to their massive use of store-bought assets. I noticed this when researching Ferris's Fatty Basha account and the fact they do credit the models within their games. And this led to Garten of BanBan having a wildly conflicting style. And the models they did make were very unoptimized. Twitter user and 3D artist ML Spence 3D made detailed threads over this. They talked about the weird placement of textures as well as the UV mapping, not to mention the amount of vertices the characters had. One model even having more polygons than the entirety of Super Mario 64. Goddamn. I note this as if my rig, which has a 3090, 64GB of RAM, and a 13700K, I was wondering why this game had noticeable load times. Forgetting the fact I can only play the game up to 1080p for some reason, the brothers are new to 3D not only in models, but also in lighting and reflections. With Unreal Engine 5 having great lighting, I suspect the brothers sort of just placed whatever wherever to add polish and some sort of cohesion for the overall idea. That's why a lot of things look weirdly shiny for some reason. As for the modified textures thing, not too much was changed as noted by ML Spence. For one example, they showed a tape recorder texture with some slight altering of the color of a button and removing of a phony logo. Going back to optimization, I should also note that they ported the game to Android and iOS despite the state of the PC game. Aside from their own glitches and issues, it did overheat my phone. I mean, my phone can run Super Mario Sunshine and a Dolphin emulator without overheating. Unoptimized. Shortly after posting these threads, the Euphoric Brothers blocked ML Spence, which is understandable. And so the game's popularity is a mix of a lot of things, starting from their Humpty game as well as their Reddit account. Going back to the Fatty Basha account, I saw that they were spamming the game into every subreddit, causing it to reach many corners of the internet. With Let's Play streamers playing the Humpty game, and always wanting something new to play, the first Garten of BanBan game was good fodder for them. Not only that, releasing sequels to the game in a short amount of time led to a lot more traction. However, due to the game's badly drawn characters mixing the shallow gameplay, lore, and graphics, it became an ironic thing to like and praise. And so the more people hated or joked on the game, the more it became a meme to talk about. DA Games even made a song about this. This even led to the game having official plushes from Mewtwo's. But for all the people mad at the game's success, just stop talking about it. Like, if you really hate something, leave them alone, because you're just kind of adding to it, you know what I mean? Especially with people watching and paying money for the game just to shit on it. Even if the brothers didn't do a good job on said game, they are making a profit, and yeah, they're also releasing another one. Despite even MatPat making a video on the subject matter, the duo are very reclusive regarding themselves and game development. In fact, their devlogs on the game barely show behind the scenes works, even having to leave Twitter because of what people were doing to them. Due to the game's massive popularity, people started to attack them and their family. While many people on the internet get death threats, it is easy to get overwhelmed and depressed regarding this. The brothers having to leave the internet is understandable and fortunate. While the games are bad, nothing about the situation caused such actions to the public to be justified. Nothing they did was illegal nor inherently a crime against humanity. All that happened was that popular reactors played a game from developers that weren't ready for the mainstream. I actually reached out to them for an interview and get their thoughts about all of this, to see how they truly feel about all this happening ever since leaving Twitter. However, they declined the interview. So to give some practical advice and move forward with what they have, I'd like to give some options for the Euphoric Brothers. Understanding that they're still in college and have student loans, after setting aside funds for that and other general expenses, I suggest they keep working on the 4th game in its current state. While that is being worked on, I'd hire an artist to redo the murals and in-game documents and edit the graphical design for the game. The designs of the characters are not bad, they're just drawn badly. I've seen some nice redesigns of the characters that really let them shine. Understanding that the characters are essentially clay figures brought to life, their designs make sense in the world. Next, I'd hire a 3D modeler to clean up the message and objects. For the former, this would be simplifying the rigs to not strain the engine, and for the latter, replacing the store-bought assets with unique ones. For these changes, you'd have a more comprehensible world that has polished graphics. I'd also hire an environmental artist to clean up some of the rooms.
Look carefully at the texture. Look at this. Do you see how it moves?
Why is the texture moving?
Yeah,
I
also
was-
the last
it's like it was drawn in chowder.
Yeah, they made it in world space and forgot to change it to local space. That's very funny.
No,
Okay, I'm not saying redo the puzzles or really do any drastic changes, mainly just making it easier for the players to understand the puzzles and to achieve them. An optional thing would be to replace any voice that the brothers did, but hiring these 3 people would do the series well in the long run. After everything is fixed for the Steam release, I'd also make sure to take some time to fix up the iOS and Android versions. Out of all the ports, those definitely need to be optimized the most. Since the game's never got a physical release, you can just call this the director's cut of the series, either replacing the original files with the Steam page, or, I don't know, make even more money and make a new version? Capitalism. As nice as it is to say this game is made by 2 brothers, I'd rather the duo have a cleaner game that has a nice turnaround, as everyone loves a good redemption story. Not everyone can be a Toby Fox or Scott Cawthon, but if you look at the credits, even they didn't make the games by themselves. As for releasing short games in chapters or about an hour each, I see no issue with that in theory. Considering the first 4 games of FNAF were made in similar time span, this is just kind of the issue with modern indie game development. Games like this get popular because they check off all the boxes for the algorithm. Horror of lore, powerful characters, short gameplay, and a quick turnaround time for sequels. Having short games released so soon rockets the games to the eyes of many fans, so much so I suspect even more games to do this after seeing Garten of BanBan, though hopefully having learned from the Euphoric Brothers' mistakes. The phrase "I want shorter games with forced graphics made by people who are paid more to work less," and I'm not kidding, is applicable here, and Garten of BanBan is a success story, even if it is one that isn't highly revered. For all the people that call it the game for having undeserved popularity, you have to blame the Let's Players talking about it. Okay, not them specifically, but I mean the algorithm that makes them talk about this game. There are so many indie games that something really needs to stand out in order for people to talk about them. I'm not referring to games like Hades, Deltarune, or Cult of the Lamb, as those had the advantage of being from known developers with good advertising. I'm referring to games like Celeste, who didn't have a large team. For the most part, a lot of indie developers don't have a way to publish or promote their games without having pure luck, or a popular creator talking about their works. Anyone can produce a great game or idea, but if no one popular talks about it, then it doesn't become profitable to talk about, which leads to no one else talking about it. This is why animated shows like Life on Mars and Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur don't often get talked about on YouTube, despite having universal praise about them. In fact, more people talked about Primos than those 2 shows combined, mainly because there was a controversy behind it. Course. Outside of pure luck within the algorithm, there really isn't a solution outside of indie developers resorting to making games like Garten of BanBan in order to get recognition to later make games they truly want to make. That or spending money or using connections to advertise your game with content creators to push it more into people's eyes. Also, spamming Reddit seems to work too, I guess. Go do that, though the latter 2 doesn't always mean your game to get traction, especially the fact for most game devs they're working on development for many years, such as A Breeze in the Clouds and Billy Bust Up. I've been following the development for quite a while, and I can't wait for the game's games to release, but they are definitely far from finished. While taking more time on these games leads to a very polished experience, it will leave people waiting for quite a while for a release. This is why people turn to creations like Garten of BanBan. So for now, we're left with a lot of creators in the shadows because the algorithm makes it more profitable to talk about BanBan, as it causes an endless cycle of negativity that drives more views towards creators like the Euphoric Brothers, who again did nothing illegal or fundamentally wrong when creating these games. To cap off Garten of BanBan as well as the Euphoric Brothers' journey in gaming, I want them to continue creating, but rather taking time to invest in themselves. They have been given a great opportunity with all eyes on them, and I want them to improve. I mean that with sincerity. As easy as it is to bash or ironically praise them, that does nothing to actually improve their works. To get told you're a piece of shit, we hate you, please kill yourself, your works are terrible, you should never create again, doesn't really make people want to get better, just makes them not want to talk to you anymore. I hope the Euphoric Brothers keep working on games, and I look forward to playing the next one in the Garten of BanBan franchise. Here's hoping it's an improvement on the ones before. Oh, I'm not counting the Garten of BanBan roleplay they had announced, as that is more of a Roblox collaboration with Duel's games. I'm referring to the mainline franchise. Best of luck to Ferris and Badir. I look forward to BanBanning in your Garten one more time. Hey, thanks for watching. Also be sure to support me on everything. Literally, everything. My Twitters, YouTube channels, and Patreon. You can also go check out my animated podcast, Saldus JJ. Wow, look, we're moving. Oh.
Hey, welcome guys, welcome back to the fucking Bad Take Delete podcast.
Until next time, keep on drawing. And don't forget to have fantastic.